Están escuchando Nuestra Gente con Linda Parra. You're listening to Nuestra Gente with Linda Parra.
There are parts of every community that, when they're working properly together, create an environment where people can enjoy healthy, happy lives. We have that ecosystem in Toledo. We have the parts here in Toledo that can make every neighborhood a safe one. What I don't think we've done a good job of in Toledo is connecting those pieces of the network.
We have a plan in place for that investment, and so that is really what's important to us. Also, we know that there are neighborhood community-based organizations out there, and we've been talking with Andy, many of them just need that capacity building to do the work that needs to be done, to connect with the young people who are being impacted or who are most likely to be impacted by gun violence. And that's really, I think, when, as chair of neighborhoods, but also talking with council members, I think that's what's really important to us, that we have
we gave a little summary about Save Our Community, which I continue to blame myself for how poorly I explained that program to the community when we rolled it out. The violence interrupters, they're making mental health referrals, they're getting people housing, they're referring 100 different people to various social service needs. So there's more they can be doing, but that was always more of their job than being the individual saviors of neighborhoods. I will blame myself.
We believe that folks need to actually readjust their budgets and how they allocate their resources and right-size their police departments, and then also invest in community-based organizations and other models of public safety that would be helpful to the conversation. We believe that cities in this country has a mindset around what public safety is, and it usually goes to law enforcement, jails, detention centers, and EMT and EMS. So that's where we usually invest, and we're trying to shift our conversation around what public safety really is and get cities to really invest in a holistic approach to public safety and community violence prevention. And, we really come in and serve as a partner to the cities and helping to really develop and think about how to develop a comprehensive public safety strategy and plan that looks at those three areas that we talk about on our Reimagine the Public Safety Framework. You guys see it on this sheet here. And it talks about interrupting the cycle of violence. How do we make sure that we create an ecosystem of individuals and organizations who know how to not only identify but engage and support those who are most at risk of being caught up in the cycle of violence. And that's a small number of folks in the community who drive the violence, but we got to create a system where we can actually get to them and make sure that they have the resources that they need to not pull the trigger or not be shot, right? So we know that there's a system in place. We also help cities think about how do we start dismantling those systems of inequity that create this environment for community violence to happen, right? How are we looking at our systems and looking at our systems through an anti-racism framework, looking at our systems through an anti-racism framework to say how are we pushing young people in community out of these systems and into this harm's way, and how are we making sure we get them better outcomes? And lastly, we again come in and help support, provide coaching and capacity building and training to key stakeholders who are leading the work. But our big thing is really making sure that we help the city build a big table and a big tent so that everybody feels like they have a role to play, because they do, and helping them identify that role and move. Last thing I will say that is very important to us that we have youth voice at the table, and not only youth voice, but young people who have been directly impacted by gun violence at the table, helping to guide the work and lead the work. So part of our recommendations always is creating a space where we have young leaders and their family members who have been the victims of gun violence, the perpetrators of gun violence, and also the witnesses of gun violence at the table, helping us guide this work because we won't get to the right solutions without.
I'm sorry,
that. So-
about 1% of the population of the city is most at risk for gun violence. Doesn't mean that they all participate in it, that they're engaged in it, or that they suffer from it, but they are at risk of it. So in a city like Toledo, that'd be about 2,700 people. And then you take that at-risk population, and then it's about 10% of that, so 1% of the total, and then 10% of the 1%. That's the number that we're really talking about. How many times have you heard me talk about all of our youth programming? In fact, before I began the meetings before you came, talking about our youth, because we're so proud of it. Oh, but $2.5 million of youth programming, 100 free programs for kids. Very proud of it. And why did we pick that number? I think it was the most we could come up with, or it came out of a budget deal, or I don't really know how we got that number, to be perfectly honest. What Cities United can do is to say, yeah, having youth programming is an important part of this puzzle. Successful cities would devote X% of their efforts to that. I don't know, as proud as I am of the $2.5 million we've spent on that, maybe that's not enough, maybe it's too much. For us, it was just a number, it was the best we could do, it was better than nothing. That is just one budget item where Cities United could say, you know what, the goal ought to be to spend X% on youth programming, and X% on a jobs initiative, and X% on policing. And right now,
making sure that those youth programs are targeting the young people who are most at risk, right? So when we talked to one of the schools today, I forget which one we went to, they were like, we didn't know about those programs.
Start high school.
Yeah, they didn't know about them, they didn't participate in them, but they said they needed them. So how do we make sure that we are creating a program and systems that are going to directly reach out to and engage those families and young people who are most at risk? It's also part of the help too. And when you talked about, is there a list? And is there a list of folks who are at risk? I think the school system also, as we heard from both of the different school systems, is that they have a list of young people that they believe that are at risk as well. And I think if you look at all of those lists and you start pulling them together, then you can really have a compiled list of folks who are at risk or being caught up in the cycle of violence. I wouldn't call them all bad guys or bad women, but I would just say these are folks who are at risk of being caught up in the cycle of violence. And I think we, as this city and as this country, could identify those folks and really target our resources and our energy towards them to really help them and their families find different opportunities. We're saying to cities, look at your budget and make investments that look at a comprehensive strategy around reducing, around public safety. So do we invest enough in housing? Do we invest enough in youth programs? Do we invest enough in the transportation and all those other things, and not just focus on investing in police departments?
So every city that Cities United has ever worked with in its 11-year history has seen the police budget increase. I assume the same will happen here in Toledo. The police budget's increased every year that I've been mayor, and I know that it will increase every year that I continue to be mayor.
Just creating that community violence ecosystem and how we invest in these resources. So one, we look at are we building the capacity of the organizations and the community to really address this issue? And then we start looking at what does the reductions look like, right? Are we seeing a reduction in homicides? Are we seeing a reduction in shootings? But we also are looking at, are we seeing an increase in graduation outcomes for that targeted population? Are we seeing an increase in employment opportunities for that target population, right? So there's both sides to this coin that we want to make. It's a holistic picture. But we're also, and we will track investments and making sure that folks are making the right investments inside of these programs. Because you all probably talk to a lot of community-based organizations who would tell you they could use more resources to do their work to really address this issue. Right? Today is creating even a table where we bring all the key stakeholders together to have open conversation. Of the 100 people that we met with today, a lot of those folks just don't come to the same table together on the regular, and you need to be so that you can have a comprehensive conversation about what's going on. What resources do we really have? Who's taking advantage of those resources? What other resources do we need? So I think those kind of tables are important to pull together.
Yeah.
The street outreach is do you see that as the violence interrupters? Yeah. Those are the violence interrupters.
That's part of that ecosystem.
That have been, on one of the slides you see, they've been at it for about a year or so. That's right. But there's a slide that shows what our violence interrupters have done on page 19. Chief, do you, I feel bad you're sitting here the whole time. Is there anything, any parting thoughts?
Can you repeat that again?
Police substation.
Oh.
He wants a whole bunch of them in every neighborhood. So do I.
Had police substations in the past, and they had some utility, and it helps us get into a community and be a part of that community better. So we're constantly talking with different organizations that are offering up their buildings, and a lot of times it's a manpower issue. And then how do we use that effectively to make it make sense for the department and the community that it would be inside.
Any just thoughts in general about this?
So, obviously, from my standpoint, from the police department standpoint, I truly believe that we as a police department cannot do this alone. Never could. To think that a police department could solve all the societal ills that have led to this violence, I think is unrealistic. And as a police chief or police department, we want to work with any community group that can help us reduce violence. And right now we have way too many young men and women that are being killed in this city, and we need to do everything we can, whether it's internally or using external organizations to help reduce that crime.